Okay, everyone, as you know, I have been showing you an animal, a unique animal of the day, actually every 2 days or so. And we did talk about them in an online meeting not that long ago. So in this video, you'll see the first group of them, and hopefully you'll learn some interesting facts. And let's hope that by the end of the year, you'll know more than 100 unique animals. Here we go. Okay, this first one is called a beaked whale. Now, beaked whales travel in groups called herds. And what's interesting is that when one is injured or captured, the herd waits for it. That's why it's so easy to catch them. So if one is in a net or it looks like it's injured, the rest won't swim away and protect themselves. They'll stay there. They might even try to rescue it if they can. And because they hang out, whalers actually, not just regular fishermen, have no problem catching them. Um, and another thing that's interesting is that we used to think that they could stay underwater for 30 or 40 minutes without coming up for air. But now scientists know, marine biologists actually, those are the scientists who study things underwater, they know that these animals can stay underwater for over 3 hours. That's awesome. This fish here is called a discus, and it gets its name from the Greek word meaning disc. It is flat and round, just like a compact disc. It can live to be 15 years old. This tiny little fish can be 15 years old, and when you see how thin it is, you won't believe it. It's also very popular to have in aquariums. This next one is called a cormorant, and this bird is used to help fishermen in a special way. In China, Greece, Japan, and other places, a string was tied to the bird, like around its neck, and the bird was trained to dive for fish and deliver them back to the fishermen. Now, the bird couldn't swallow it because of the string tied around its neck, so the fisherman would hold on to the string, and the bird would be like a kite on there, and they would just tug on it, and the bird would know to fly back down and spit the fish out into a bucket. And of course, the fisherman would always give the bird some fish as a treat. And here's what it used to look like when they did it in the old days in Japan. You can see fishermen holding strings. The fire that you see there is because a lot of times in Japan they did this at night. It was just easier for the birds to catch fish at night, interestingly. Okay, so that's the cormorant. The next one is a sturgeon. The eggs of this fish are used for a special dish called caviar, which is really expensive. It can be as long as 10 feet. There's some can be longer than 20 feet. That's longer than a truck. Okay, it's a huge fish and its eggs are very delicious. That's a sturgeon. This one here is called an electric eel. It is actually not an eel, it's a fish. It makes its own electricity. It's like a swimming battery. Its shock can be up to 500 volts, which can really hurt. It can't kill a human, but it can really, really zap us so that we'll never ever want to go near it again. Okay, so that's an electric eel. This one is pretty cool. This is a sand boa. This is called a two-headed snake because its head and tail look almost exactly the same. Can you tell which one is the head and which one is the tail? You ready? Right here. That's the head. Pretty cool. This next one is called a coyote. It is related to dogs. It looks a lot like a wolf, but it's actually weaker and smaller, but it's also much faster. And we say a coyote is a very communicative animal. That means it makes a lot of different sounds so that it can communicate with other coyotes. It even has a way of greeting, of saying hello to other coyotes. This is called a griffin vulture. Okay, it is slow at flying upwards, but it can stay in the air for 10 hours by gliding. So it uses a lot of energy to flap its wings. It's not really pretty when it's flapping. It looks like it's going to run out of breath. But once it gets up in the air, it just throws its wings out to the side and it can just glide for a long time. Kind of like an airplane doesn't flap its wings. This one doesn't either. The griffin vulture, 10 hours in the air. That's almost 2 school days in the air without coming back down. This one looks like a snake, but it isn't. It's actually a lizard with no legs. And what's really interesting is that the tail breaks off easily, so that if an animal catches it from behind, it bites into its tail or puts a paw in its tail, no problem. The tail just breaks off and it'll grow another one back every time. This is called the glass lizard. Just a lizard with no legs. How interesting is that? And this one here is called a heliozoan. Helio means sun, and zoan means animal. It's also where we get the word zoo. Okay, a zoological garden, a zoo is a place where animals are kept. Okay, so heliozoan gets its name from the fact that it looks like the sun. That's it. And here's one really cool fact about heliozoans. If they're very, very small, you need a microscope to see them. But if they have a large piece of food, what they actually do is join together with other heliozoans, other heliozoa, we call them if there are many, and they work together to munch down on a giant piece of food. So imagine you had a huge piece of food and you couldn't eat it, and you joined arms with a bunch of your friends and family members, and you all started chomping away at it. Very cool animal, the heliozoan. Oh, the luminous centipede. Luminous means that it glows. And if you ever go with mom or dad to a store to buy light bulbs, they'll tell you how bright they are. It'll say like 50 lumens or 10 lumens. And we get words like illuminate and illuminary and illumination. So lumen means light. Centi means 100. Like when we talked about thermometers, we had Fahrenheit and centigrade or Celsius. And later in the year, we'll learn about centimeters and the little the little brown coins, the little copper or zinc coins that we use that are only 1 penny. Those are 1 cent because 100 of them make a dollar. So the luminous centi, the glowing 100, and pede means foot. So a centipede is something that they say has 100 feet. Now, usually a centipede only has about 40 feet, 35 or 40, depending on the type. This one has 354 legs. Yup, and it glows. Oh, yeah, it's a little poisonous too. This next one is called a kingbird. It's interesting because it's pretty small. It's only about as long as a pencil, but it will attack any bird, no matter how big it is. It doesn't matter if it's a crow, a falcon, an eagle, any bird that gets near its nest, the kingbird will attack it. So it's very protective of its nest, and it's not afraid, even though it's so small. And it's interesting when it attacks the bigger bird usually just gives up because it doesn't want to be clawed at and pecked at, so it just flies away. So this is a tough little bird. It's part of a group of birds called the Tyrannidae family. Now, Tyrannidae is an interesting word and it might look familiar. It comes from the Greek word tyrannus, which means the king, the strong king, the tough king. And it's also where we get the name for the Tyrannosaurus rex, the T-Rex. So this bird's got a pretty big name, right? And you can see even in its regular name, kingbird. That's a pretty big name to have. There are 350 different kinds of kingbirds. Very, very interesting. Okay, let's move on. This next one is called a white Persian. This cat, especially if it has blue eyes, is deaf. That's right, it can't hear, which is one of the reasons why it has such big eyes. It has long hair, and now it's called a white Persian. Even though Persia is another name for the country of Iran, this cat actually comes from China. So a very, very, very long time ago, people thought that certain things came from Iran, but as they explored the world more, they found out that before Iran, they had been in China. This is a very popular cat to have, but they're very difficult to take care of, and they get sick very easily. But they're very beautiful. Okay, there's the white Persian. Okay, this one is called a spectacled bear. This bear can climb palm trees up to 100 feet tall. 100 feet tall. That would be like taking our school, our primary school, and stacking, I'd say about six of them, five or six of them, one on top of the other. So if you had a palm tree as tall as, let's say, six of the primary school, this bear could climb all the way up and get the goodies that are at the top. One thing that I like about it is that the word spectacled comes from the word spectacles, which means glasses. So if you know anybody who wears glasses, you can say, "Oh, you're wearing spectacles." And watch this. Here's a better look at it. Doesn't it kind of look like it is wearing glasses? I mean, look at its eyes. It almost looks like a panda. Okay, and you can almost see that there's a you can see like the circle where the lens is and maybe the hook around there. It's called the leg, actually. Okay, and then we can see where the other lens goes right there. Okay, and we'll give it another leg. And there you go. Okay, I hope you like that one. That's the spectacled bear. It's actually much smaller than other bears, but it's still much heavier than we are. This one is really interesting. This insect is called a cicada. It's an insect that can be heard from 150 feet away. It doesn't bite, it doesn't sting. There are over 1,500 different kinds of cicadas. Listen to that sound. It kind of sounds like a saw, like a carpenter's tool, right? Okay, there you go. There's the cicada. Boys and girls, that's it for now. As soon as we get to another 10 or 12, maybe 15 animals, I'll make another one of these videos. Watch them and learn them because I'm going to be asking you about them pretty soon. The end.